I want you to imagine, if you will, a youth group leader sitting cross-legged in a circle, reading the Acts 2 passage to a group of children by a single flickering candle. Now imagine the room is pitch black because the leaders have gone to great lengths earlier that day to black out the room with garbage bags so that not even a crack of light can break through. Are you with me so far? Youth group leaders, young people, single flickering candle, and pitch black darkness. And the leader, sitting cross-legged, begins to read from Acts 2. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place, and suddenly a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. And just like that, the youth leader flicks on a switch and the industrial fans that they set up earlier that day all turn on. The candle is extinguished. The room is plunged into total darkness. The wind is howling. There's screams, some muffled laughter, and one or two kids that are so terrified that they get up and they run for the door, except it's pitch black and they hit the wall instead. Best laid plans, right? It's chaos, a cacophony of confusion. Can you imagine it? And if you've ever been a part of a youth group, completely realistic for what happens in youth groups. And the confusion, the fear, the chaos, I imagine, is exactly what would have been experienced that day the Spirit of God imbued the people that were gathered together. Pentecost is such a wild and wonderful celebration. It's filled with wonderful images of what early Christian church experienced, or what we experience as we seek to live out of the presence of God. These images, they fill our imaginations, they fill our vision. When you think of this day, Pentecost, what kind of images come to mind? I want you to look around yourself right now. What do you sense? Or what do you feel? What can you hear? Or what can you smell? What can you see? And as you do that, pay attention to your body. Can you feel your feet on the floor? Can you feel the tightness of your shoes? Or maybe that muscle that just won't relax? Can you feel your back against the chair? Or feel your breath as it enters and then leaves your body? What can you hear? My voice? Do you hear the hum of fans? Do you hear the breathing of people next to you? Maybe you hear the background of the noise in the street. As you look around, what can you see? The high roof, the illuminated organ, maybe the cross, or the back of the chair in front of you. Maybe you're in a lounge room. What can you see? A sea of red. Some of us are wearing red clothes, a symbol of fire and flames, fire that refines and anoints. It's a powerful image of the Spirit of God. No one who is touched by the Spirit of God remains the same. Our banners and our flowers are red as well. And hasn't Faye done an amazing job with the flowers this morning? And this banner was made many years ago by Maureen Noble, who's now a part of our online community and is watching this morning. Those of us here in person, we carry a little flame with us, a tongue of fire card with a greeting of peace in a language that isn't our own. I'm wearing a red stole which in the Uniting Church is used every time a new minister is ordained, symbolising that God gifts the church with everything that it needs to live out its life together. Today is a special day, so take it all in, because today is your day, and today is my day. Today is also our neighbour's day. It's like a birthday of sorts. Pentecost, a day reserved for celebrating the beginnings of the Christian church. And we're going to celebrate with cake at morning tea, not just any cake, but a rainbow cake. The many colours that symbolise just how diverse and distinct we are, both individually and corporately. And we are celebrating the grafting in of all of that diversity into the life of our community. But to say that today is the church's birthday is kind of not 100% accurate, because it wasn't the first encounter that people had with the Holy Spirit. Let's be clear, the Spirit of God is not reserved for the church. I want you to remember. Remember that it was the creative Spirit of God that hovered over the waters at the beginning. Remember that it was the creative Spirit of God who breathed life into Adam's nostrils. It was the creative Spirit of God that was active in the lives and the livelihoods of the people of Israel right through the Old Testament. From Moses and the elders appointed as judges over the people, to the prophets, who were often described as being caught up in the Holy Spirit or in the Spirit of God as they declared words of the Lord. To Isaiah, who famously said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." And now in John's Gospel, as the disciples sit in a locked room, a bit like our youth group at the beginning, cowering in fear, it's their mentor and their friend Jesus who breathes on them and says, "Receive the Holy Spirit." And I really want you to listen. Listen to the confusion that sets in as those who are gathered for the Feast of Weeks, 50 days after Passover, as they see what unfolds. Observe the fear and the terror as they hear a violent wind howling all around them. See the shock on each other's faces as messages are spoken in their mother tongue from foreigners. And experience the awe and the wonder and the amazement as this moment is explained and made known to them. Fellow people, all of you who are visiting from far off lands, listen carefully and get this story straight. These people aren't drunk, as some of you suspect. They haven't had time to get drunk. It's only 9 o'clock in the morning. This is what was announced would happen by the prophet Joel, and it's happening now. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit on every kind of people. Your sons will prophesy, and your daughters as well. Your young men will see visions. Your old men dream dreams. When the time comes, I'll pour out my Spirit on those who serve me, men and women both, and they'll prophesy. I'll set wonders in the sky above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and billowing smoke, the sun turning black and the moon blood red. Before the day of the Lord arrives, the day tremendous and marvellous, and whoever calls out for help to me, God, will be saved. So what do you experience on that day? What do you see or hear? What do you feel? Trick question. In the Acts 2 passage, which is probably familiar to most of us by now, what's the most common activity that people engage with? What do you think most people spend their time doing? They listen. The disciples listen for the Spirit of God. The crowds listen to people babbling in other languages. And they listen to Peter as he shares the good news. They listen, and in listening, they hear where God is already at work and where the Spirit is leading them. Last week, in our final week of Oikos, we spoke about watching and listening for where God is already at work. We call it the Missio Day, participating in the mission of God. And so the invitation today is to do that, to listen. The Aboriginal cross that you see behind me was painted especially for this congregation. It was painted by Susan Reyes of the Darapa Warra clan in Cairns. And it's called Patience. And it tells the story of deep listening. It's an almost spiritual skill. It's a sign of respect for ourselves, for our families, for our neighbours, for creation, of taking the time to listen. And then again, listen more deeply. And over the past couple of weeks, with Sorry Week, with the anniversary of the Bringing Them Home report on the stolen generations, with the anniversary of Mabo Day, there have been so many opportunities to listen deeply to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And Wesley Mission has been privileged enough to host some of them. But there's a really big difference between having opportunities to listen and actually taking time for deep listening. So listen. The story of Pentecost is a story of listening. But so is every single day ever since. Every day is an invitation to pay attention to where God is at work in you and also around you. So listen, God is with you. God is in you. The Spirit of God, the creative life force of all things that moves over deep waters, is with you. So be still. Ground yourself in this moment, not in the tasks that lie ahead today, not in the worries that you came here with, or the worries of tomorrow, because they'll still be with you. As we listen, as we look, as we feel, where is the Spirit of God at work today? And how can we enter into it? Listen. Pentecost is a reminder that God is at work in the world. God is at work in the world still. The breath of God in you, the breath of God in me, the breath of God in our neighbour. God is at work inviting people ever closer, should they listen. God is at work in our neighbour as we take time to meet people. We are invited to encounter God. As we serve, we're invited to encounter God. God is in our oikos, our home. God is in our koinonia, our interrelatedness as a community of God. It is in the creative Spirit of God that we are united as one. In my last placement at Moggle, on my first day I was taught a word. The congregation was predominantly South African, and they taught me the word Ubuntu. I am because we are. That means no one is left behind. It's a Zulu word. And the fledgling Acts 2 church got it. Have a listen to this. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold their property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. And every day they continued to meet together. They broke bread in their homes and they ate together. with glad and sincere hearts. That's the kind of church I want to be a part of. As we prepare our hearts to encounter Christ through communion, I invite you to take the time to listen, to be still. And as we do that in preparation, I invite you to have a look at the screen and listen through the words and the music that is shown. Thank you.